Hey everybody, and welcome to another video tutorial brought to you by Brusheezy. I'm Eric Wallace, and today I'm going to show you how to colorize your Photoshop brushes. The first thing you notice about Photoshop when you click on your brush tool and go to the brush preset menu is that all the brushes are in black and white. Every single one of them is grayscale, and the only way to get color into your brushes is for you to add the color yourself. But never fear, we're going to learn how to do that in just a second. But first, we're going to click on the paint bucket tool and choose black is our foreground color and fill the background layer black. That'll give us a good background to get started with. Then I'm simply going to go over to the layers palette and create a new blank layer, and then choose white as my foreground color, and then select the brush tool again. Then I'm just going to go through and pick a rather large brush for this example, and I've got this kaleidoscope set here I'm really enjoying, so I'm going to use that and just put a rather large brush right in the middle of our screen there. Photoshop is very unique due to the fact that there are several different ways or methods to perform the same functions within Photoshop. So today I'm just going to go over two simple coloring methods for brushes, but you may have some of your own or some other tips and techniques you enjoy using at the same time. This first technique is going to use the layer transparency option. And what we're going to do is go to our layer with our brush on there and lock the transparency. It's the first icon here on the layers palette. And preserving the transparency of the layer allows us to only make changes within elements on this layer. So because we don't have anything in this area on the screen, nothing that we do to this layer is going to show up. The only time a change is going to show up is when it's placed over what's already on the layer, and that's just our one large brush here in the center. So to put some of this in action, if we go to our brush tool again, and this time just go and choose just a regular rounded brush, maybe 100 size is good, and we go and grab some color, we can just start painting, and you'll notice that our paint only affects what's inside the layer because we have that transparency on. Now, if I were to turn this off, look what happens. You can paint and you're just going to see the brush everywhere. Now we can edit, undo that, put our transparency back on, and do this again, and you'll see we're only painting inside the brush. So this is one method of coloring brushes that only lets you paint inside the brush. And again, you can use any of the brushes that you like from your presets. You can even use any of the tools, the paint bucket, the cloning tool, anything you'd like to use, and it will only make changes inside the brush that you've already drawn. Now, we can also use the tip to fill the entire brush with a particular color, and we've used that before in some of our other tutorials. As long as this lock transparency option is on, we can choose another color that we like, and if we want to fill the entire layer with that color, all we have to do on the Mac is hold down the Option key and hit Delete, and you'll see the entire layer is filled with the foreground color. Similarly, if we switch the color to the background, we can fill that holding Command Delete, and that will fill a layer with the background color. So there's one example of coloring brushes using the Preserve Transparency option in Photoshop. The second technique I want to go over is very popular right now, and it kind of gives your brushes kind of a glowing, stained glass kind of look, almost like watercolor. And what we're going to do is we're going to start again with a blank layer and a blank background that's just solid black, and I'll make that blank layer on top now. And again, we're going to use white as our foreground color, go to our brushes, and choose whatever brush you'd like. Again, I'm going to use some from this kaleidoscope set. I'm really enjoying that, so I'm just going to put a few different brushes here on the screen just so we have some variety. Okay, there we go. Now that I've got all these brushes on the screen, what we want to do is create a new layer on top of the brushes and use this compositing menu and use the overlay composite. And what that's going to do is composite colors and elements that we put on layer 2 on top of everything else. So it's going to affect layer 1 and the background layer. And how that's going to work is based on the luminance. So the white colors below layer 2 are going to receive the color and the elements we put on layer 2, and the darker parts of the layers below, or the black parts, will not. And if that didn't make any sense to you, watch this in action and I think you'll understand. Again, we're going to choose the brush tool and just go up and choose a regular large soft rounded brush, and choose some color. And watch what's going to happen. When we start painting on here, you'll see that the color starts to come through on the gray areas of the elements below, but not coming through on the black parts or the completely solid white parts. Now what this is going to do is give you a very cool effect with colors, kind of again that stained glass glowing look. If you look what this is starting to look like, you kind of get that impression here. We can throw maybe some blue into it, and you just get a very unique look that tends to be very popular right now. Finally, we'll just throw some other colors maybe in the center here, and maybe one bold color, maybe a bright orange here, just to get some sparkle in there, if you will. So you get the idea. You can do this all day long, and this technique is very powerful because look what we've got here. We have all of our colors on a separate layer, and if you're wondering what this looks like without this composite mode, look at this. This is what we've drawn, and we can use the overlay to composite that on the layers below. I can click on the arrow tool, and because all of our colors are on a separate layer, I can then move those colors around and reposition them within the brushes or any of the elements below layer 2. So that gives you some added flexibility. Now what we can also do is go up to Edit, Transform, and use any of the transform options, including Scale, Rotation, Distort. That gives you even more flexibility in morphing and changing the way these colors are overlaid on the brushes. Another thing we can do is duplicate our layer by dragging it simply into the new layer icon, and that even gives it a harder overlay. And again, we can move this layer by using the arrow key and kind of give it a different look with colors overlapping in different areas. So this method really gives you some added flexibility and a really cool look to your brushes. The final thing I want to show you is just a very simple trick that can help you come up with some different color options and some different color schemes that you might not have considered before. I'm going to go ahead and just delete this layer, so we're just working with one, and then I'm going to go over to the Image menu and go to Adjustments and choose Hue and Saturation. And what the Hue and Saturation will allow us to do, watch this, if I crank the saturation up, you're going to notice the colors get a lot more vibrant, and they really shine through on the layer. And if we turn that down, we kind of get a muted, kind of a black and white or sepia tone. But I'm going to crank the colors up a little bit more, and then I'm going to use the Hue control. And what that's going to do is reposition our colors on the color wheel. So watch what happens when we start to move this. You'll see the colors are starting to change, and you get some new color options and just some really cool different colors that you might not have considered before. And of course, this can go both directions and really gives you just some neat options. You'll see now we've got some light browns and some cyan colors when we really started again with this kind of a sea green, blue, red, bright yellow. But just by using the hue controls, we really can get some different, very cool looks and some different color schemes on our brushes. I certainly hope both of these techniques have been helpful, and now you know how to colorize your Photoshop brushes. I'm Eric Wallace, and until next time, take it easy.